Where is the ideal place to listen to the Parsha podcast? That's a question that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I always thought the answer was the commute. You're on the subway, you're in the car, public transportation, but you're going to work, you're commuting to work anyhow. You're a captive audience. It's the quick and painless way to integrate some study, some Torah into your schedule. But then I said, maybe it's working out. It's important for your health to be strong and to live a long life so you could serve your Creator. And you're going to work out the mind, the soul, and the body at once. So as you're pumping iron, as you're jogging, you're listening to the Parsha podcast. Maybe that's the best place. Or maybe when you're making food for Shabbos, you're making the challah, you're making the meat and the chicken soup, and you want to get in the zone for Shabbos and you want to connect with the Parsha. So you put on the Parsha podcast and we kind of prepare Shabbos together. But I heard a new one. This one takes the cake. You see, last week, I had the great privilege of getting together with some of our friends in Toronto. I'm speaking to you from the Torch Center in sweltering Houston, Texas. So I'm back home, thank God. We drove Sunday, Monday, 10 hours on Sunday, 14 hours on Monday. We arrived like around midnight on Monday going into Tuesday. But we're back. But last week I was in Canada. We had a get-together and it was a phenomenal, magical evening. And I met a bunch of new friends and we had a phenomenal class. And there was a lovely couple there with their son. And they told me that they put on the Parsha podcast in the pool. They put on their knickers. They go into the floaties. And they go in the pool and they put it on out loud and they even showed me a nice video. I absolutely love it. I don't have a pool myself, so I cannot try it. But if you have a pool, do me a favor. Try it and let me know what's it like to listen, to enjoy the Parsha podcast in your swimming trunks, in your pool. RabbiWolbeJim.com. Let me know where you listen to the Parsha podcast. And if you try the pool challenge, it's August. Now's the time to try. It's Parsha's Seitzei. And following this week, there are only 4 more Parsha podcasts for this cycle. We have this week, Seitzei, Kisavo. This year, Nitzavim and Vayelech are connected. Ha'azinu, V'zos HaBracha. We're nearing the end of year 10 of the Parsha podcast. With the help of the Almighty, we haven't missed a week. And we hope and pray that we can do this for many years to come. And it's a loaded Parsha. I know that I say this often. Oh, it's such a loaded Parsha. But this one's like empirically loaded. You see, in the Torah, there are 613 mitzvos. And we have 54 Parshas, or Parshios. There are 74 mitzvos in our Parsha, more than any other Parsha. 12.07% of all the mitzvos of the Torah are featured in our Parsha. It is empirically loaded. And it begins with war. This is one of the major themes of the book. The nation is on the precipice of crossing the Jordan River, entering the land where they will have to wage war against 7 Canaanite nations. And they need to be prepared for all the aspects of war. And I look back. Every single Parsha in the book of Devarim hitherto has mentioned in one way or another the pending war of conquest in the land. And in fact, there are several different laws about war in our Parsha. Now, the first law featured in our Parsha, it's a bit of an odd one. It's the law of a beautiful, captive woman. You go to war and you take captives. And there's a ravishing, beautiful captive, and you are so infatuated. You are so desirous of her. You want to marry her. This is seemingly an unfortunate circumstance. This is a woman from an enemy nation, from a people that would kill us and destroy us if they could. But she is so beautiful and you are so stricken, you desire to marry her. What's the law? So if we hadn't read this up to this point, if we didn't know any better, we would say, well, certainly the Torah would categorically ban this. This is not where a nice Jewish boy goes to find a bride. But the Torah says, actually, there's a possibility you can marry her. First, you must see if you really want to marry her. She looks great now. The enemy nations, they would have their daughters dress in quite flattering, provocative clothing as a way to distract the enemy combatants. So do you actually want to marry her? Or maybe you just have a desire, an infatuation that will quiet over time. So for a month, you must undertake activities that make her a little bit less desirable. So she gets an unflattering haircut, and her nails must grow wild, and she's positioned in a way that she's going to nag and complain. This is an attempt to try to temper, to attenuate, to tamp down on the desire to have this woman. But if after a month you still desire her, you may marry her. That's the first law of our Parsha. Now, there's a very instructive comment in Rashi as to why indeed the Torah permits this union. And Rashi says something very interesting. The Torah only speaks in opposition to the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. And if the Almighty would not permit you to marry this woman, you would marry her anyhow. The Yetzer Hara is a force that we are supposed to contend with. We have to overcome it. So it's resistance. It's a contra, as they say in Hebrew. It's a force that's opposing us, but we're supposed to overcome it. That's the nature of Torah. But if there is a force that's so overwhelming, there's no way to overcome it. There's no way to resist. You will capitulate, you will succumb. Well, then it's not included in the Torah. And if this particular situation, where the bullets are flying and the hormones are raging and the testosterone is pulsating. I remember hearing this once, that they would give a men a gun to play with and they would measure their testosterone before and afterwards and it would just shoot through the sky. So the man is in war and he's so desirous and there's just no way to control it. And therefore, it's not included in what the Torah prohibits. Yes, the Torah would love to prohibit this, but it's just not prohibitable. Because if it was prohibited, you would do it anyhow. This is a fascinating and really incredible point here. The Torah is a guide for us, and it's a comprehensive guide. And no matter where you are in life, a young person, an old person, a beginner, a more veteran student of the Torah, someone who's pristinely righteous, and someone who's a sinner, the Torah can speak to all of those people. And this is like the Torah's guide to the sinner. The Torah doesn't want the Jewish boy to find a wife. There's plenty of wonderful young Jewish women for you to marry. Why are you going to this enemy nation? The Torah does not want to permit that. But for someone who's going to sin anyhow, there's a guide for it. This is like Sinner 101, a how-to guide for how to sin. The Torah does not want this Jewish warrior to marry this beautiful captive. He's going to do it anyhow. And even when he is sinning, there is a way that the Torah prescribes for how to do it. Now, of course, most of us are not soldiers conscripted for battle. So most of us will not have this exact scenario, but all the commentaries tell us that the war that's being described in our Parsha can be applied to other wars, other conflicts, including the Great War. And I'm not referring to World War I, as it was called before 1926. There is a great war that we are all combatants in. And that's the war against the Yetzer Hara. Our sages always described it in military terms. We have an adversary who's skilled, who's armed, and who is dangerous. And it wants to destroy us. And we have to devise a strategy and develop tactics to overcome this enemy, or else it will triumph over us. And there's total war. There's total war in every area of life. And we see a fascinating idea. In some of these wars, you could win. And in some of them, you're going to lose. But even a general who loses a battle can still win the war. Suppose you're going to have a battle that you know for sure you're going to lose. So what do you do? What do you do? What's the proper way to lose a battle? That's what we're being taught over here. There's a way to lose, but still hopefully maintain a chance to win the war. So for example, if you lose a battle but you maintain your army, you avoid a total rout, you live to fight another day, you lost the skirmish, the battle, but you could still maybe take a toll out of the enemy. Well, that's the way to lose. Don't lose it all. Keep up the fight. Live to fight another day. It's a fascinating idea. Of course, you read the verse and it's like, well, this will never be applicable to me. And our sages, when they unpack it, they're giving us guidance for this most important area of conflict of our life, the war against the Seitzei. Sometimes you're going to lose a battle. Well, how do you do that? Maybe the battle can be won. Maybe if you spend a month and you're wrestling with it and you're trying to win, you're saying, well, maybe I could reduce the desire a little bit. And who knows, maybe within 3 weeks of the nagging, the complaining, the long fingernails, and the unflattering haircut, maybe I could win. But what if I can't? Okay, if I can't, at least I tried. I took a stab at it. There is a way to capitulate to the enemy. There's a way to lose a battle. And that's what the Torah is instructing us. And our sages cite a very interesting teaching in the Talmud. The Talmud talks about a person whose evil inclination is overpowering him. What should he do? So the Talmud tells us that he should go to a place where no one knows him. And he should don black garments. And he should cover himself in black. And he should behave in the way that he seeks to behave. But at least, he won't desecrate the name of God. We see just, again, very interesting and maybe a subject not spoken of enough. There's a total battle happening in our life. And in some areas, we're going to lose a battle here, a battle there. Even in those unfortunate circumstances, there's a way to do it. Have minimal casualties. Go down swinging. Don't give up. Maintain the struggle. Don't allow the Yitzhak to lord over you. Avoid the risk of a wipeout. Prevent total loss. This is the first law of our Parsha. We said there's 74 laws, 74 mitzvahs. We studied 173 to go. Following the law of the beautiful captive, we have the law of a man who has 2 wives, and he loves one of them, and he hates one of them. And it just so happens that his firstborn son was born to the hated wife. Now, to be firstborn, there's some perks. They always say that, parents, they get their bearings of how to raise their kids properly. It takes some time. So they do some experiments that don't exactly go as planned on the first son. So he gets some perks. He gets a double portion in the inheritance. So suppose a man has 4 heirs. One of them is a firstborn son. The estate is divided up into 5, and the firstborn son gets a double portion. But this man wants to tinker with the laws of inheritance. He wants to give the firstborn double portion to the boy, not the one that was born first, but the one who was the son of his more beloved wife. That is forbidden, he must apportion the double portion of the firstborn to the one who was indeed firstborn, whether he is born to the more beloved or to the less beloved wife. Now, Rashi tells us very interesting, there's a certain continuity in the Parsha. The man finds a wife that he is desirous of. This relationship was forged over lust. This relationship was built upon pillars of desire. And the Torah is juxtaposing this to the law of a man who hates his wife. Why would a man hate his wife? This is the woman you choose to marry. Well, if you find your wife in such a manner that you are just desirous of her, you lust over her, just so you know what's going to happen to this union, it will lead to hatred. Something very cool I want to share with you. We know that in Hebrew, it's a intricate language. And one of the ways that it's intricate and different than, let's say, English, there are consonants and vowels, of course, but the vowels sometimes appear as letters, and sometimes they are featured as invisible nekudot, meaning in the Torah scroll you won't see the vowel, but you'll read it the same way. Sometimes this may not make any sense, but you have the exact same word spelled differently in the Torah in different instances. Once it will be spelled with the vowels as letters, and once those letters will not appear as letters, but rather will be invisible in the Torah scroll, they will be read the same way, just the nekudot, which is dots and dashes above and below the letters, those take the place of the vowels. Okay? A little bit of inside baseball here. In the three verses, chapter 21, verses 15, 16, and 17, the three verses that talk about the apportioning of double portion of the inheritance to the firstborn, the word bechar, which means firstborn, is featured 5 times in these 3 verses. And the word bechar typically is spelled the beis, the chaf, the vav, that's the vowel, and then the resh. In all 5 times in our Parsha, in these 3 verses, where the word bechar is featured, the vav, the vowel letter, is omitted. Why is that? Very, very cool. We know that in Hebrew, letters have a numerical value. So aleph is 1. Well, what's double of that? Beis is 2. Gimel is 3. That's not double. So aleph to beis is a doubling. But then beis to gimel is not a doubling, because 2 to 3 is not a doubling. Well, when you get to 10, it goes 10 to 20. So 10 to 20 is doubling, but 20 to 30 is not a doubling. And when you get to 100, it goes 100 to 200. That's kuf to resh. There are 3 letters that have a numerical value that's double the previous letter. The beis, the chaf, and the resh, spelling out the word bechar, meaning firstborn. There are only 3 letters whose numerical value is double of that of the preceding letter. The bechar, the firstborn, gets doubled, and it's spelled indeed without the vowel letter. Following the law of the double portion to the firstborn, we have the law of the wayward and rebellious son. This is a boy. At a very specific age, they are 13, they're an adult, but between the age of 13 and 13 and 3 months, it's a very specific window. And they do a very specific constellation of activities. They steal money from their parents. They buy meat and wine. They eat the meat and wine in bad company. The Torah forecasts that such a boy, at this specific juncture in life, they do these specific set of things. They are on the path to a life of crime. And yes, their crimes today are innocuous. They stole. Obviously it's not a admirable thing, but come on, it's not a serious crime. It's a misdemeanor. In some places, you can call the cops. That's why when you go to CVS, you want to buy toothpaste, you got to have someone come and lock it for you someplace in this country. But the Torah forecasts that this particular set of circumstances, the child at this age doing these specific things, they are on a way to a life of crime to such an extent that this boy will eventually escalate in their criminal activities, and eventually this boy will become a man, a criminal, who will do heinous crimes, who will be executed for said heinous crimes. And therefore, in order to spare him from being executed for a heinous crime, he is executed now. He dies innocent, or relatively innocent, and not guilty. Now, there are many, many different conditions needed in order for this to actually happen. And chief among those criteria is the fact that the father and the mother both have to voluntarily choose to bring this boy to court and to have the court punish him. Meaning, if either parent decides to not voluntarily bring their wayward and rebellious son to court, he is not judged for his crimes. So how often was a wayward and rebellious son executed? How many times in the last 3,300 plus years did this happen? Talmud tells us, well, it never happened. It never happened. Oh, and it never will happen. That's what the Talmud tells us. Very famous and intriguing teaching in the Talmud. Well, if it never happened and it never will happen, why does the Torah spend the time to tell us about this law? Why is it written? Drosh v'kabel schar. Study it and be rewarded. And for those of y'all who are familiar with the archive, we've done a few podcasts in the past about what exactly this means to study it and be rewarded. But I want to share with you something absolutely fascinating. This is a comment from Rabbeinu Bechaya. What is the great reward for studying this law? How much do you have to love God? How much do you have to love your Creator? Well, there's no love in the world that compares to the love that a parent has for a child. The father loves his child. The mother loves her child. And there was a boy who did some not wonderful things. He's stealing. It's terrible. And he's developing a taste which will lead to a dependency for wine, for meat, and he's hanging out with bad company. The parents have a choice. Are you going to bring him to court to be executed? Why? Because God is forecasting that this child will live a life of crime and will eventually be executed for far greater crimes. That's one option. Or do you say, we don't want to adjudicate this. He'll grow out of it. The parents are encouraged to love God, to trust God more than their love for their son. So, of course, this law never happened. It never will happen. But there's a powerful lesson. The lesson is, what does the Almighty expect of us? What does He want of us? And he adds a very profound point. There was a man, there was a father who loved his son. It was his beloved son. It was his only son. And God said, I want you to go sacrifice this son for me. Of course, we're talking about Abraham. Abraham, binding of Isaac. Abram was told, which one are you going to love more? God or your son? And he chose God. So there's a law. It's a theoretical law. It never happened. Never will happen. The wayward and rebellious son. The lesson that we're supposed to glean is that each one of us are expected to strive to develop the same love of God that Abraham displayed in the binding of Isaac. Law number 1, number 2, number 3, and there are many, many more laws. The immediate burial of the dead, returning lost objects, not cross-dressing, sending away the mother bird before taking the chicks or the eggs, putting a fence around your roof so no one falls and there's no bloodshed on your property, not intermixing seed, not plowing with different animals, the ox and the donkey. I saw something very interesting. The ox is a kosher animal, the bull, the bovine. It chews its cud. The donkey is not kosher. It does not chew its cud. You have the ox, you have the donkey, and you feed them both. They're both fed, and now it's time to plow the field. You are fed, now do some work. So you hitch up the donkey and the ox, and throughout the time they're pulling the plow, the ox is chewing and chewing and chewing. Not because it got new food, it's chewing its cud. And the donkey is like, why am I not being fed? I have this dude or this thing next to me, and it's not fair, and you're going to cause pain to your donkey. And that's why perhaps commentaries tell us this law is told to us, don't plow with different animals with different species. Many more laws, not to wear shatnez, a garment interwoven of wool and linen. To yes, where it sits is on the corners of your garments. Of course, we saw that law in the past. Deuteronomy means the repetition of Torah. Many laws that we've seen hitherto will be repeated. The penalty for falsely accusing your wife of adultery. The penalty for adultery. The penalty for seducing a young maiden. The prohibition of a variety of people from intermarrying amongst our nation. A eunuch cannot intermarry. A mamzer, an illegitimate, a bastard, someone born from an illegitimate union, cannot intermarry amongst the Jewish people. An Ammonite or a Moabite convert. Who are these Ammonites and Moabites? These are nations spawned by the progeny of Lot. You recall the shameful, ignominious, consanguineous, incestuous interactions that Lot had in the cave with his daughters after the overturning of Sodom and Gomorrah. 2 sons that were conceived in successive nights with his 2 daughters. These sons burgeoned into nations. Members of these nations, Ammonites and Moabites, even if they convert, so they're fully Jewish, they have to follow all 613 laws of the Torah. They cannot intermarry amongst the Jewish people. Why not? Torah tells us. Because they displayed a lack of kindness and hospitality after the Exodus. They did not approach you with bread and water. And they hired Bilam to go curse the Jewish people. The Moabites, after all, they're our cousins, right? Lot had a sister named Sarah. Lot had an uncle / brother-in-law named Abraham. And Abraham treated Lot with tremendous kindness. When he was taken prisoner, Abraham, he raised an army to go save him. Abraham prayed that Lot should be saved from the overturning of Sodom and Gomorrah. These nations should have reciprocated our kindness, the kindness of our patriarch for their patriarch, but instead they chose to not offer us bread and water. They chose to hire Bilam to curse and try to destroy the nation. Such a treacherous act of ingratitude, of lack of kindness and hospitality, renders their descendants ineligible to intermarry with our people. And there's a very deep point the commentaries tell us. The Moabites, the Ammonites, they convert. They're part of the Jewish people. But they cannot intermarry. Why? It seems like it's a punishment, right? That's how you would read it. It's a punishment for the cruel deeds of their ancestors. Commentaries tell something much more profound. There's a characteristic that these people, that this nation has, that just is not compatible with our nation. The hallmark of our people is to be kind, is to be merciful, is to display gratitude. When there is a people who have in their bones, in their DNA, unkindness and lack of mercy, cruelty and lack of gratitude, we just cannot mix these 2 nations together. So the Ammonites and the Moabites, they can never intermarry amongst the Jewish people, or at least male Ammonites and Moabites cannot intermarry. Females can, of course. That's why Ruth, great-grandmother of David, a Moabite convert, she was eligible to intermarry amongst our people. That's the Ammonites and Moabites. What about other nations that we have some history with? An Egyptian convert. Ooh, we spent some time in Egypt, you recall. It wasn't so pleasant. What about a convert who comes from Edom, descendant of Esau? Can they intermarry? So an Edomite convert, after 3 generations of being Jewish, can intermarry. An Egyptian convert can intermarry right away. Why? Because they hosted us in their land. and for that we must forever be grateful. For them, even though the conditions of our sojourn in their land was unpleasant, nevertheless, we cannot have this animus towards them. They can intermarry right away. More wartime laws. A fascinating verse, chapter 23, verse 10. When you are making war against your enemies, v'nishmarta mikol davar ra. You should protect yourself from all bad things. There are all sorts of bad things that can happen in war. Protect yourself. The Ramban comments here. He says that it's known in wartime, soldiers behave in ways that they would never behave in any other time. They'll eat anything, they'll steal, they'll rob. They're shameless. Even people who, in peacetime, are righteous, are noble, are upstanding, they can become cruel and they can act with rage during war. There's an atmosphere that breeds lawlessness, frivolity, reckless abandon, chaos in war. And the nation's told, when you go to war, protect yourself. Be aware of that. Protect yourself from all bad things. Now, this verse in the Talmud, it teaches us a very interesting, fascinating idea. The Talmud tells us, well, the verse says when you go to war, you should protect yourself from all bad things. All bad things. Not some bad things, all bad things. What's included in all bad things? Says the Talmud, there are certain bad things that can happen at night. Someone can have an inappropriate dream at night that can lead to a nocturnal emission. That's also included in the category of bad things. The mind can run amok when you're asleep. Your unconscious can conjure certain things that are not appropriate. And that's unbefitting of you. That's a bad thing. Protect yourself from that, says the Talmud. Well, how do you do that? The Talmud says, well, what you think about during the day is going to lead to the kinds of thoughts you have at night. So don't dwell upon things by day that can lead to unfortunate events at night. And the Talmud has a postscript that serves as the basis of one of the most famous books in our history. From this teaching, Rabbi Pinchas, son of Yair, deduced, Torah begets fastidiousness, and fastidiousness begets alacrity, and alacrity begets cleanliness, and cleanliness begets abstinence, and abstinence begets purity, and purity begets piety, and piety begets humility, and humility begets fear of sin, and fear of sin begets holiness, and holiness begets Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, which is a low level of prophecy, and Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, begets Tchias HaMesim, resurrection of the dead. A very famous teaching of the Talmud that is the basis of the book Mesilas Yesharim, sometimes called Path of the Just, sometimes called Way of the Upright. This is the work of Ramchal that serves as the principal work of Musar, of character development. He explains every part of this ladder. You want to become a prophet. You want to achieve a low-level prophecy. You want to achieve resurrection of the dead. How do you do it? There is a path. There is a ladder. And in the most unusual place, it's found in our Parsha. Another law related to war. When you, in war, you go to relieve yourself, you should take a spade, a shovel with you. And with that, you dig a hole and cover your excrement. We are an august, dignified people. We are a princely, elevated, dignified, courtly people. But war is dangerous. It can bring out a savagery, a beastliness in people. And the Torah tells us, protect your dignity. Do not descend to an animalistic level. Even though people are dying, still maintain your dignity. And another fascinating law If there's an escaped slave who escaped from outside the land of Israel into the land of Israel, you cannot return him to his master. It's like the opposite of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Even if the slave is not Jewish and the owner is Jewish, you cannot take a person who is in the land of Israel and remove him from this holy land and bring him to his master who is outside of it. More laws in our Parsha. The prohibition against prostitution, the prohibition against the usage of the prostitute's fare for a sacrifice, prohibition against taking interest and usury, the imperative to keep your word. If you make a pledge, pay it. Laborers working in the field. You can't muzzle them. They must be allowed to snack, but they cannot take a doggy bag home. Laws of marriage, laws of divorce, laws of remarriage, laws of a man in the first year of his marriage. He does not join the army. Kidnapping is a capital offense. If you have a tsaras affliction, you cannot excise it with a scalpel. A collateral for a loan must be returned to the owner when they need it. If it's a day garment, it's a collateral for the loan, you have to give it to them by day. If it's a night garment, you have to turn it in at night. Day laborers must be paid on the same day. Do not corrupt the judgment of a foreigner or of an orphan. The dropped shearings, leave it for the poor. Lashes, for those who deserve it, no more than 40. Do not muzzle an ox as it is threshing. Yibum, Levirate marriages. We did a whole podcast last year, year 9 of the Parsha podcast, Yibum or Bust. Everyone remembers that. 2 brothers, one dies with no children. The surviving brother marries the widow, and they provide a legacy for the deceased and childless brother. Honest weights and measures. And the Parsha ends with a revisiting of our nation's cosmic conflict with another nation, the nation of Amalek. Zechar, remember what Amalek did to you when you left Egypt. They attacked you on the way. They preyed upon the weak ones. You are required to eradicate the memory of Amalek from underneath the heaven. Do not forget. This is a callback to our nation's first war following the Exodus, even before the nation arrived at Sinai. Chapter 17 of the book of Exodus. You recall the story. The nation was attacked. Moshe assigned Joshua to lead the battle the following day. Moshe goes up the mountain. He raises up his hand in prayer on the top of the mountain, and Joshua and his men weaken Amalek with a sword down below. The nation of Amalek is the opposite of our nation. Whatever we stand for, they take the other side. Our nation was designed to bring knowledge of God, awareness of God to the world. Amalek is the opposite. And so long as this nation of Amalek remains extant, the throne of God is incomplete. The definition of us fulfilling our mission is the eradication of Amalek, and whatever Amalek stands for, eradicate it from underneath the heavens, and that is something we must never forget. It's a parsha that's loaded. No other way to describe it. And if we want to go backstage and find an underlying theme, or even a theme that's found throughout the parsha, it's difficult. But we don't shy away from that. It's our mandate. It's year 10 of the Parsha podcast. We have to go backstage. So let's begin. In our Parsha, in a most unusual location, we find the instructions for how to achieve prophecy, how to achieve resurrection of the dead. Do you want to know how to do that? Do you want to know how to become a prophet, how to resurrect the dead? We have the instructions in our Parsha. A very fascinating verse. You go to war against your enemies. V'nishmarta. Mikol davar ra, protect yourself from all bad things. Says the Talmud, what does that mean? Don't think by day about things that will lead to impurity at night. And the great Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair deduces from this teaching a whole ladder, a ladder that takes ordinary people and turns them into prophets, into those who resurrect the dead. And he tells us Torah, well, it begets fastidiousness, which begets alacrity, which brings about cleanliness and abstinence and purity and piety, humility, fear of sin, holiness, prophecy, and resurrection of the dead. If I ask you, well, where do you find that in the Torah? I imagine most people would not find it in chapter 23, verse 10 of our Parsha. And we're not exactly sure how exactly do you deduce all of that from the verse in our Parsha. The verse is telling us, you go to war, protect yourself from all bad things. Well, that includes all bad things, even bad things that seem to be apparently out of our control. And the Talmud tells us that it's possible to control even the seemingly unconscious, subconscious, undirected thoughts that occur at night when you're asleep. Even those things are within your control. You can govern the nature of your subconscious, your unconscious thoughts. That's a magnificent discovery. Well, how does that work? How do you control your dreams? Is this lucid dreaming? Can you really prevent the dreams from going to inappropriate places? Well, the verse says you can. You can protect yourself from all bad things. Well, how do you do that? You are able to prevent your subconscious, your unconscious thoughts from going to inappropriate directions. Why is that? How does that work? Those thoughts are a product of the person who had those thoughts. If you can find a way to change the person, then you could find a way to change the thoughts that come out of the person. The discovery of this verse is that it's possible to change who you are, to change your essence, to change your hardware. It's possible to change yourself to such a degree that even the things that come out of you, the thoughts that are not directed, that are not actively controlled, you don't even know how they will surface. You don't know what you're going to dream about tonight. You don't know. Many people don't remember their dreams, right? All I know is that it's a very creative script writer. But then I wake up in the morning and forget all about that. You don't know what you're going to dream about tonight. The verse tells us, those thoughts that are a product of your subconscious, your unconscious, it's possible to have those thoughts not be governed at all by anything inappropriate, by the Yetzer Hara. Why? Because those uncontrolled, undirected thoughts are a product of you, and you can be changed. Comes little Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, and he says, wow, we could deduce from this that if the nature of a person can be changed, and even something as subtle, as seemingly ungovernable as your unconscious thoughts, well, can we map out how a person can change? How does a person go from being ordinary to being a prophet, to being someone who can achieve resurrection of the dead? And he worked, and he found a ladder of ascension. It starts with Torah, but that begets fastidiousness and alacrity and so on, all the way to holiness, to piety, fear of sin, prophecy, resurrection of the dead. And there's a fascinating contrast. The Parsha begins with the beautiful captive. You're just smitten. You're smitten. And you want to marry her. And the Torah says, oh, okay, there's a way to do it. Wait, what? The Torah doesn't want you to do that. What's the rationale? So Rashi tells us, well, if the Torah did not permit it, you would do it anyhow. In this particular situation, the hormones are raging, the bullets are flying. There's a certain sort of desire that's just not controllable. This is not controllable. And therefore, the Torah does not forbid it. Because the Torah only tells us things that are doable, that are feasible. And this is not feasible. It's not doable. You can control your thoughts. So you don't have any unfortunate nocturnal events. That is doable. The unconscious mind can be changed. But the soldier in war who sees the very seductive captive, that he cannot control himself. And therefore the Torah says, okay, that I'm not expecting you to control yourself. What happens unconsciously, it's a byproduct of who you are. If you change who you are, you change what happens when you don't make active decisions. There's a very interesting statement documented to have been said by King David. David, king of Israel, he's a king. Well, what does a king do? So today we don't really know what a king does because we don't really have many kings. We have ceremonial kings. But it used to be the king would run the whole state. And there are manifold affairs of state that need to be tended to. And David said, I head out. I'm going to my chambers to go deal with matters of state, but my legs, they just refuse to go there. They just head towards the academy to go study. What he's saying is that he just instinctively gravitated towards holiness, towards righteousness, towards purity, towards God, towards Torah. He didn't, it was like uncontrollable. Meaning his legs, they just went in that direction. He wasn't controlling them, and they just walked towards the academy. This is an example of someone who is able to achieve such a high level of righteousness, of purity, of holiness, that when they just act, when the legs just go on their own. They go on, where do they go to? They go to righteous places. I think we see a contrast in our Parsha between the things that we can control and the things that we cannot. The things that we can change and the things that we cannot change. We read about a variety of different nations. Amalek. This is a nation that's irredeemable. They cannot be redeemed. They represent the thwarting of awareness of God in the world. There's only one solution for them. You must eradicate the memory of Amalek from underneath the heavens. If someone is part of this nation cannot be changed. What they stand for is the opposite of our nation. They stand for the diminishment of the presence of God in the world. So long as they're around, God testifies the throne of God is incomplete in this world. There's no way to redeem them. They must be destroyed. The Moabites, the Ammonites, they're not punished in our Parsha. The Torah just says they are not compatible with you. They have a characteristic that's hardwired of ingratitude, of inhospitality. Is that a word? Inhospitable? Inhospitableness. They're not hospitable. They're not kind. And yes, many generations have elapsed since our nation left Egypt, and since they refused to provide us with food and water, and since they hired Bill to try to curse us. The Torah is telling us that those characteristics are inborn and are unchangeable. They're part of the DNA of this people, and they could convert, they could join the Jewish people. We don't have a requirement to destroy them, but don't intermarry. Because what you have is very special, and that will get lost if you mingle with this other nation. You can't control your unconscious thoughts. You cannot control your hormones in battle. Certain nations have qualities that are unchangeable. Two of them cannot join our people for that reason. One of them must be destroyed for that reason. It's a pattern. Backstage, in the Parsha, what is changeable? What isn't changeable? And I think it's a critically important subject. And we see a fascinating precedent in our Parsha. Certain things are unchangeable. Certain challenges cannot be overcome. And that affects how you approach said challenges. The soldier in battle, he's faced with a unique set of circumstances that make it impossible for him to control himself. Yes, he must maintain his dignity. He takes a spade with him. He goes out of the camp to relieve himself. But when he sees this captive woman, if the Torah forbids it, he'll do it anyhow. Well, if it's not possible to control yourself, if it's in the category of what's uncontrollable, you're not expected to control it. 3 nations with certain inborn, unchangeable characteristics: lack of kindness, ingratitude, inhospitality. In the Ammonites, in the Moabites, and no matter how many generations have elapsed, these characteristics are unchangeable. And there's another nation, Amalek, a nation that's essentially the counterweight of our people. As long as they are around, the throne of God is incomplete. The only way forward is for this nation to be eliminated. This framework, I think it has enormous consequences for us as individuals. We're trying to elevate ourselves. We're trying to upgrade ourselves, refine ourselves. It's imperative for us to know what is within the realm of the changeable and what's outside of the realm, what we can change, what we cannot change. And in our Parsha, we learn that surprisingly, a lot is in our control. It's possible to ensure that the undirected thoughts that surface when we are asleep, those thoughts can be managed. It's possible to change yourself to such a fundamental degree that your undirected thoughts, your undirected activities, like David, he's just walking, he's strolling. He's not planning where he's going. He ends up in the academy. His undirected actions are noble, are righteous. Some things are changeable, some things are not. You want to improve yourself? Well, you have to improve yourself. Character perfection is why we are here. And if someone is an angry person, or they're impatient, or they're unkind, you got to fix that. I heard rumors, and I have no evidence to support this, but I've heard rumors that there are some teenagers who sometimes struggle waking up in the morning. They like to sleep in. You have to address that. Some people have delusions of grandeur. Even if it's not a delusion, it's an accurate vision of grandeur. But if someone has a view of themselves that is hubristic, that's arrogant, that's haughty, that's unbecoming of someone who was created. If you're a creation, there's no reason, there's no rationale for you to be haughty. Haughtiness and hubris are subcategories of faithlessness. If you believe that you were created, there's no room for you to be haughty. Humility, by contrast, is just another way to say faith. And everyone's stricken with a different set of character shortcomings. And the reason why we are here, the number one mission in life, is to achieve perfection, to create a version of ourselves that's perfect, that can flourish forever in the afterlife. We have to perfect ourselves here in this world so that when we arrive there in the next world at the end of the corridor, we're ready. And we don't need any posthumous perfection. Well, how do you achieve perfection? You have to perfect every area of life. You have to be someone who's righteous, who's upstanding, who's good in every possible way. In your relationship with God Almighty, your Creator. In your relationship with your fellow man, interpersonal. In all of your characteristics within. And the Gaon of Vilna, he used to say, there's 3 different categories. Some things can be changed with just a little work. And certain things can be changed with great effort. And surprisingly, there are many, many things that are within this category, including what you dream about. And there's a third category, the things which are unchangeable. And you have to know what falls into which category. And if something's in the third category, you can't change it. It's hardwired. You have to deal with it. You got to work around it. There's no other way. We're nearing the end of the Parsha cycle. We got 4 Parshios to go. We hope and pray that the Almighty gives us the strength to finish this cycle of the Parsha podcast. We're back in Houston, Texas. I'm in the Torch Center. I appreciate you joining me on this journey throughout Parshas Seitzei. And please God, we'll get together again next week for Parshas Kisavo. We're approaching the end of the cycle. Wow. What an amazing accomplishment. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a splendid rest of your week. And of course, a meaningful and productive and uplifting and exciting and enjoyable Shabbos upcoming. And please don't tell me we'll talk again next week. And of course, my email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. Do me a favor. Send me an email and forgive me if it takes me a while to get back to you. Let me know what's going on. How are things? Questions, comments, feedback, and just general chit-chat. rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.